Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. Micah with CoronavirusDiaries, and today I'm blessed to be able to speak with Linsey Williams, a non-commissioned officer in the Minnesota National Guard's Public Affairs Office, also an aspiring, or rather, has a professional career in mixed martial arts, which we'll touch base on a little bit. But myself and Linsey had connected not too long ago through another project I was working on, Inspiratio, and we were fortunate enough to interview her, and I just thought pull over to this side of things and talk to her about how her life has maybe changed in the last month, really, since we met. But before I go too far into all that, Linsey, would you do a favor and for the listeners, for the viewers, explain who are you, what are you up to, and kind of where are you headed?
Yeah, hi everybody. So my name is Linsey. I'm working from home right now, teleworking. We're just doing our very basic operations, just kind of limiting who's accessing the armory right now, one person in the office during the week. So we're rotating and I'll be in there tomorrow. But we're still doing the things we need to do, communicating with the public and producing photos, videos, stories, capturing all the good things that we're doing. And so that's kind of work right now. And then outside of that, just trying to keep some semblance of normal.
Yeah. So thanks again for jumping on the show. I really appreciate it. And before we had really started, we were chatting a little bit about mission readiness or preparedness and like kind of the deployment of military throughout the world and just kind of the changes that are happening. You brought up a really interesting point, how I had mentioned that I thought there was an article about like the reserve or the guard being deployed locally, whether in Minnesota or another state, to help with like nursing homes or something. And would you mind sharing kind of what we had got into? Because I think it was a really good, valid thought or point that you had shared.
Yeah, and let me preface that with one of the things that you hear about National Guard a lot from the recruiters, but it's a fact, is that we live here, we work here, and we serve here. And I think for a lot of people, our age or younger, or a lot of people who kind of only have a concept of the Guard post 9/11, we've really become this force that's almost, really the right hand of the active duty army. And, they understand that, all right, well, they get deployed every so often and they're around for big emergencies like wildfires or floods. And that's what we know, that's what we understand. But we are and always have been a tight-knit part of the community. I mean, like Minnesota, for example, we've got armories throughout the state. So I mean, farmer up in northern Minnesota might be driving to town and passes his local armory, and that's where the Joes congregate on the weekends. And prior to, like I said, 9/11, it was kind of more low key. You drill on the weekends, you do your 2 weeks, and it was pretty simple. But we are and always have been around and available for times of crisis like the one we're living through now.
Yeah, I know years ago when I'd gotten in, the first real deployment, I guess you'd say, was a local deployment, and it was to go to an area in Minnesota where there was a missing person that our units had to go for. It was the Drew Shadeen stuff that had happened up north. And I just remember thinking then that it was a far cry from what I went to boot camp for, right? Like we were running around in like 60 below with wind chill, massive drifts, and we're searching for this a resident, in Minnesota. And then fast forward a year later, and it was like deployed to Iraq. These different kinds of dynamics in that sense. But yeah, it's really cool to see the diversity that we have for our service members and kind of how they can help community. And I'm curious with what you're doing. What is a public affairs non-commissioned officer do? Like what you talked about, sharing content, putting information out there for the public. Can you explain like a day in life? Like what is that?
Yeah, so a lot of major organizations nowadays, if you look at the Minnesota National Guard Facebook page or Instagram page or Twitter page, the messages that the adjutant general puts out, and a lot of those kind of big communication elements, we produce those. And that's, and when the media comes calling or they're looking for a contact in the Minnesota National Guard, they come to our office. So that's, we just want to stay tied into the community. We want to give as much information as we can, be as transparent as we can about any of our operations. And, just kind of be that gateway that helps bridge the divide between, the constituency and us.
Sure. So with working with the media like that locally, is there, and it sounds like you've started doing this social distancing even within your own office where you're rotating people in. You're really, it seems like your team is taking it to heart that, you really got to do this. Is there any sort of like mini deployments? I don't know what you call them, where you're being asked to go out into the community and, maybe I've heard that there's I don't know if they're called field hospitals, but like kind of surge hospitals of sorts, or even testing stuff. Are they talking about sending you guys out to do any like reporting, or is it not really on that level?
So whenever we're involved, we want to, be there to capture the imagery. And for example, there was just a blood drive that we were able to coordinate at Camp Ripley last week. There'll be one at our Cedar Street Armory in St. Paul this week. And so things like that, we definitely want to be there for all of those things. But as far as, the different things that are going on, I mean, we take our orders as they come, and we, send the assets out as we need to. And by assets, I mean, a content gatherer like myself or another soldier who might go, take some photos or do a video, or, find a way that we can communicate that story with images. And so, yeah, at this point, information comes and is disseminated almost as, we might get a call from the governor and only know something, we push it out as soon as we know it. We don't.
Sure.
Yeah. It's
in near real time.
Yeah. It's all day by day at this point. It's such a weird scenario that we haven't really experienced before.
Yeah, I guess, but in some respect, the military training, it's almost like you're made for this, right? Because that's the being ready to pivot at any.
I will tell you, the first few days of this, and even sometimes now, it feels as though I'm living through one of our simulated exercises, and that's exactly what it feels like. It's very strange.
It's kind of like when you're in any training exercise. Like for example, I remember some of the ones that I love to hate were we were like mobilizing, right, to go overseas on a deployment, and so they have small unit operations where they're basically putting you in every worst case scenario that you just don't want to have to be in. Mm-hmm. So inevitably, every single mission you go on, they take out like the top 2 tiers of leadership, right? Like immediately, like, oh, the truck's hit, you're done, you're in charge now. And suddenly they put like, one of the lower ranking people that's like, figure it out. But it's kind of like that, right? Like it's day to day. You don't know really what's going to happen in 72 hours from now, let alone 2 weeks from now. And you just roll with it and go with it. So
that's exactly what we're doing.
We're real world on the job training right now.
Yeah.
Speaking of training, so mixed martial artist, you were competing at an amateur level for how many fights was it?
6, and then a couple kickboxing fights that didn't really count. So 6 MMA fights.
Okay. And for the viewer or the listener, anybody that's not familiar with mixed martial arts, there's a good chance you've heard of UFC or Bellator. It's basically like little tiny gloves and that's it. And you go into a cage and you duke it out. And it's submissions and grappling along with striking. The pinnacle of individual competitive sports. So you had transitioned from the amateur to pro. How long ago was that?
In 2017.
2017, and you went into this new class of fighters where everybody had their share of amateur fights. Everybody had competed at this higher level. So back to the training, right? Like to compete in something like that where you are going up against someone else that has put in, I mean, what is a camp usually for you? How many weeks is a camp?
So I like to, much more than 5 or 6 gets to be a little much for me and my body
Okay.
and the way I train. So about 6 weeks, but
Okay.
that was when I liked to be at a certain level of fitness all the time. I mean, I basically lived in the gym for a while, and so it was
So
great. Yeah.
So you're living in the gym to begin with, and
Hmm.
then those additional, roughly 6 weeks, you just level up the intensity, duration. I'm assuming, did you do much of a cut, or was nutrition like a major thing that you were really driving on those
Yeah,
camps?
I nutrition was important, but I would like throughout camp I'd lose about 5 pounds, but then I'd cut about 8 or 9.
Water weight?
Mostly,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Right. So now COVID-19 enters. A lot of stuff is locking down. Obviously, there's, even the UFC is talking about how they've canceled a number of really, really high profile fights. Suppose it could have been probably one of the biggest ones in the history of the sport itself. Um, it is what it is. How are you managing or maintaining your routine? Are you like, can you talk about, excuse me, can you talk about your routine a little bit, or how you're managing, because there's like kind of two things. There's the mental side of everything, and then there's the physical side of everything, and that kind of merge together.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, for me, I have to do just the little things to stay normal and take advantage of the nice weather and the the time that is available to me, because I'm fortunate enough to still have a job that pays, and that is and has to be my first priority, and working around that is it's different because I'm in a confined space. So there's no real separation between, my workspace and my workout space.
right.
The
Before the
gyms are
meeting,
closed. Yeah.
you
And
showed the bike right behind you.
yeah, I mean, this is my space. It's where I work. It's where I play.
Yeah.
Um, for me, if I write things down, it helps, like this is the time I'm going to do something, or this is what I'm going to accomplish. And then I just give myself as much time as I need to do it. So whether it be, all right, well, I'm going to do XYZ bag drills, or I'm going to do this workout, or I'm going to do this thing, it'll get done. Otherwise, I'll go stir crazy and just wind up doing something willy nilly,
Yeah.
which is fine. But
5 hours of cat videos on YouTube, or
yeah, I'll be honest. I binged all of Tiger King this last weekend because it was all rainy. So
what is with this? I watched a
have you
little
not
bit.
seen it?
I watched a little bit. I don't actually watch a whole lot of television myself, but
Yeah.
very interesting so far.
Yeah, it's almost, I'm trying to take this time and not, I think it's an opportunity for each of us to try and refine our peace in whatever
Right.
way that works for us. And I think that's important. When this first started going on, I was journaling more than I had in a while, because I was getting ready to go to a tournament. I mean, COVID-19 shut down one of the biggest tournaments in the world, the Pan Jiu-Jitsu tournament in California.
Right.
And and just after that, our gyms closed down. Nobody knew what to do. So our community has really gotten together and helped each other. One of my gyms has, a series of, like an online schedule now where they're doing Zoom classes. And then my other gym, they're putting out new video content for people to try and continue to learn. And for me, I was spending so much time grappling. I've gotten back to just trying to work on my stand-up striking and just kind of work on those sort of forms and things like that. And just kind of find that balance. And my heart really goes out to people who, either don't have that community around them or may have lost their job and they're really, things are not settled or stable and they just have an uncertainty of what's next. And I almost bear guilt. It's not guilt, but I know that I'm fortunate. So I try to just, keep that balance and keep that peace in life, because there's getting all worked up isn't going to help anybody.
I think what you're talking about here is that you have empathy, and that you recognize that the position that you're in, it's a nice place to be at given the circumstances. Yeah, that's great. It's everybody's learning how to adapt right now. And, you mentioned the training courses online. I suppose, for anybody that is in a position where they're like, there's uncertainty, maybe that would be a good route for them to start seeking out these, because there is communities now. And that's one of the bright things that I see coming out of all of this, is that even though we've never been more separated and sheltered than we are right now, I think it's almost, in some ways, we're becoming more connected than ever in human history, because suddenly there's people that groups of my friends I'm seeing are in, big chat rooms with friends, right? Like you don't have to drive 30 minutes or an hour or, in some cases across state lines to go see friends anymore. It's jump on a video chat, and who would have thought, it's so simple. And yet it's like a first for a lot of people. So great. Well, was there anything we're getting up to about that time right now? And I know your time is valuable. I don't want to hold you too long. Is there anything that you wanted to touch on before I let you go?
I think I've kind of touched on all the things I want to touch on. I just want to remind everyone that this is all temporary, and we're all going to get through it one way or the other. Just if you have the means to, donate to a cause or to, help feed the hungry or do something, anything, please do, because there are a lot of people hurting right now. And other than that, just stay balanced. That's the best thing you can do.
Brilliant. Yeah, I love it. It's it's in times of extreme stress and emergency situations that the true colors of communities really show. And it's refreshing to see so many people like yourself that, when it's in a time like this, you're looking outward saying, how can you help? Or, and then also just looking for opportunities, like even in some of the most difficult times in history, it's when some of the biggest opportunities present themselves. So conversation I've had with a number of people over the last couple of weeks is maintaining that optimism to look for the opportunities, even though they may not be necessarily what the opportunities that people were hoping for, they're still out there. And it's just keeping that mindset to adapt. It's almost the military mindset, right? Is adapt and overcome to whatever. Yeah. Great. Well, Linsey, I really appreciate you jumping on the show and chatting with us. Really looking forward to hopefully be able to connect with you again here in another week or two and kind of see what's changed in the last 2 weeks. But until then, viewers, listeners, thanks for joining us. Hope you got something out of it. Stick around. There's going to be more coming at you. But until next time, we'll see you later.